Hi, it's Helen Tarrant. Welcome to another episode of the Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and today I'm going to answer the question whether you should be buying retail in 2021. Now, obviously, in 2020, retail's had a bit of a hit, and we have still some closures here and there in terms of borders, and that might also be impacting on some of the retail sales and also food sales and all the things that's associated with a retail shop front that you'll be getting right now. And the confidence might be still a bit low in the market. So should you be buying retail in 2021? So retail type properties. Firstly, what defines a retail property? A retail property is anything that is ground floor, glass front, basically faces the street. So it doesn't matter if it has a professional tenant like a dentist, allied health, or hairdresser or a barber. It can be selling anything from lollies to takeaway coffee to a restaurant to maybe a club of some sort. They're all considered retail type properties. So the question is, should you be buying that in 2021 or should you be looking for a different type of property? Now, we know in 2020 warehouses have been really, really popular, but really the trend won't always stay that way. So what should you be looking for in 2021? Well, in 2021, I'm predicting that there is going to be a resurgence in terms of a retail property because people are chasing returns, and retail properties ultimately, if you look at the history of retail properties, they've always been the one to give you really stellar commercial rents that's grown over time, especially as areas gentrify and become popular. So you got to ask yourself, well, should you be looking at buying something in 2021 even if the rent is stagnant? So the rent is probably going to be stagnant in the retail sector for probably another 2 years or so, and you may need to swap out a tenant. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about what it's like to swap out a tenant, what are some of the things to look for. But the thing is, you're buying retail shops, not so much for the cash flow component, where there still be cash flow with the interest rate being so low, but to look in the longevity of 5-10 years down the track. As the area recovers, retail will bounce back. There will be more upward pressure on the rent, which means rent will actually increase at a faster pace. And as a result of that, what you will be getting is actually more increased rent, and therefore the value of the property will actually go up. Now, retail traditionally, once it starts to bounce back, it tends to start to double and triple in a very short amount of space of time. So I think that in a little while, if you can hold out for the next 3 or 5 years in terms of getting a retail property, you will actually end up with a property that's going to give you much more capital growth in the long run. And also, whatever rent you're missing out now, which means you won't be getting the stagger returns you would now, but whatever rent you're missing out now, you will pick that up on the back end. So if you want to invest in retail in 2021, look at it as a long-term game, something that will be to gain in the more 3 or 5 year or 7 year period down the track, more as a capital growth exercise over cash flow, and more something that you know that you need to have a buffer in place so that if you need to swap out a tenant, you can do that. And then once you do that and you can maintain stability in the rents, even if you have to give a bit of a discount for the rents in the first 2 to 3 years as the market comes back, you will reap the rewards many times over into the future. So this is about playing the long game. So if you want to invest in a retail property, look at the long game. Also, some of the characteristics you might want to look at in terms of retail, tenants will always move. So it's unlikely you're going to find a tenant that's highly unlikely to move, because even tenants have been there for 20 years. There's been tenants that have shut down during COVID. There've been tenants that have just left. There've been tenants that's gone bankrupt COVID. So even if you've had that for the last 20 years, does not mean that all of a sudden your tenants won't leave. So what's the best way to safeguard it is to find a property that's in a really good location, that's got a good tenant hub, so it's got other light tenants, a lot of food tenants or other professional tenants nearby, and properties that doesn't have tenants that already have high rents. Because some of the tenants may have gone into this premise 5 years ago, and they may be on a long lease. They may have renewed in the last 2 or 3 years, and the rents have consistently gone up. So they may have inflated rents, which means that once you come to renew, you might have to give them a 20 or 30% discount on the rent, which is quite common in this current market. So look at the rent now, do a comparison. You may need to scale back the rent and do a realistic purchase price on the property based on if you had to adjust rent as well. So if you can hold out again for the next 2 or 3 years, perhaps take a hit on your returns in terms of yield and cash flow, you will gain that back in terms of rental increases as well as capital growth in the property in the next few years. But that's a really long game of 3 to 5 years to hold, and really 7 to 10 years if you want the property to grow exponentially as well, because areas around Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane are gentrifying, and if you follow those areas and buy in key locations, and that's the key for retail, buy key in locations where suburbs are gentrifying, and traditionally suburbs and strip malls have been doing a much better job than metro and CBD areas, you will get that reward in the long term. But remember, retail at the moment is the long game, and definitely this year, while other people are still investing in other types of properties, it's worthwhile to look into investing in retail. So I hope that's been helpful. If you wanted more specifically on what type of retail you should be investing in, the key points to look for in terms of retail property, reach out to me at helentarrant.com. In the meantime, hit the bell and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.